There are moments in life where your silence says more than words ever could, where your stillness holds more power than 1,000 explanations. And chosen one, you've reached that moment. They had no idea you were watching, feeling, discerning, but you knew. You always knew. While they thought they were deceiving you, manipulating the atmosphere around you, moving in shadows and smiles, you were reading the room with spiritual eyes. You were discerning energy, motives, shifts. And now that the truth is surfacing, they're stunned. Not just because you were right, but because you were right all along. Clear your mind and open your spirit. What's coming is too big for old mindsets. What's coming requires space. God is about to pour out something powerful, and He needs a vessel that's ready to receive. Before we dive deeper into this word, I need you to do 3 things. First, like this video, not just to support the channel, but as a bold act of agreement with this prophetic message. Second, subscribe and help us reach 1,000 chosen ones walking in purpose. Then go to the comments and write 99 or 777. These numbers are more than symbols. They are prophetic signals to heaven. 99 represents fulfillment and divine urgency. 777 represents spiritual completion and divine perfection. When you type them, you're not just commenting, you're declaring in faith that you're ready. Third, write your deepest desire, your most heartfelt prayer in the comments. Don't just type it, release it with faith, because whatever you write in faith becomes sealed in the heavens. This is your divine declaration. Now let's speak truth to what you've been sensing. They didn't expect you to have spiritual radar. They underestimated your silence. They thought your kindness was blindness. But what they didn't realize is that God had given you knowing. And that knowing isn't learned, it's granted. It's divine insight. It's prophetic clarity. It's a sixth sense that speaks before people confess, that confirms what's hidden, that exposes what's disguised in laughter and fake support. You watched the whole thing unfold, not because you were nosy, but because you were gifted. And that's why you've been misunderstood. That's why people tried to discredit your voice, twist your narrative, call you too intense, too spiritual, too suspicious. But in reality, they were afraid of what you saw, afraid of how much you sensed, afraid that the very thing they tried to keep hidden was already decoded by your spirit before they even acted on it. You were always 10 steps ahead, not by arrogance, but by anointing. And now, they're shaken, because it's all coming out. Conversations you weren't part of but somehow sensed, plots that never reached you, yet you still prepared for, betrayals you didn't witness, but you still survived. Because when heaven gives you revelation, you no longer wait for receipts. You walk in certainty, and that certainty has disrupted the people who thought they could play you. They're blown away by your accuracy, and it haunts them. Because it means you saw them, not the version they performed, not the filtered identity they put on in front of you, but the real version, the hidden heart, the inner jealousy, the secret intentions. And even in seeing it all, you didn't lash out. You didn't seek revenge. You didn't expose them. You just evolved. You grew. You elevated. You observed in grace. And your ability to hold space, to carry the weight of what you knew without letting it harden you, is the very thing that's making them panic now. Because your silence was never weakness. It was a warning. Your stillness was never fear. It was spiritual strategy. They thought you were naive, but you were always calculating in compassion, aligning in prayer, discerning in peace. This is why your aura changed, why your energy started repelling the fake, why you no longer felt comfortable in rooms you used to sit in with ease. It wasn't anxiety. It was your spirit reacting to deception. The divine gift within you was too pure to tolerate polluted energy. And now that the masks are cracking, people are scrambling, trying to shift the blame, rewrite the history. But it's too late. You already know, and what's wild, you never needed validation, you never needed a confession, you weren't waiting for someone to say, yes, you were right. You already received heaven's confirmation. You already got the signs, the dreams, the inner tug that wouldn't let you ignore what was real. And you honored that knowing with obedience. That's why you're standing in peace now, even while others are spiraling in the consequences of their own games. They're shocked you knew, but heaven isn't. Heaven trained you for this. That accuracy is not coincidence, it's inheritance. You were born to see, you were designed to hear what others overlook. You were called to be a light in the shadows, not just for your protection, but for divine order. Because when a chosen one sees clearly, cycles are broken. Generations are saved, whole atmospheres shift. And that's exactly what's happening now. The reason your knowing cuts so deep is because it isn't rooted in suspicion, it's rooted in divine discernment. Chosen one, you don't just feel things. You perceive at a level that interrupts illusions. That's why people get uncomfortable in your presence. Not because you're doing anything wrong, but because your spirit pierces through what they're trying to hide. This is the season where your spiritual sight becomes your strength. In the past, your insight may have made you feel isolated. You'd walk into rooms and instantly detect the tension behind the smiles, the bitterness behind the laughter, the envy beneath the compliments. And when you tried to express it, people told you you were overreacting. But you weren't. You were early. You were tuned in while they were still asleep. Your accuracy is divine technology. You are built with prophetic sensitivity, a radar that isn't bound by time or logic. That's why you often knew something was off before you had any proof. That's why you changed directions without a clear reason. Why you distanced yourself even when everything looked fine on the surface. And now, everything you felt is being confirmed. They're not just shocked you knew. They're disturbed by how calmly you carried it, because you didn't react. You didn't fall apart. You didn't scream, "I told you so." You simply elevated. You moved in silence. You adjusted your boundaries. You protected your peace. And now, your ability to remain composed while fully informed is terrifying to those who hope to confuse you. They don't know what to do with someone who sees everything and still refuses to be petty. They assumed your kindness was ignorance, that your forgiveness meant forgetfulness. But you were simply choosing to heal instead of harm. You were honoring the weight of your calling, not sinking to the level of your critics. And that's the difference between being chosen and being reactive. The chosen one doesn't need to clap back, because heaven already responds on their behalf. The truth is, your spiritual accuracy isn't just about knowing who's against you, it's about knowing what's ahead of you. You don't just discern people, you discern seasons, shifts, timing. You've been sensing this moment coming for a long time. You may not have had the language for it, but your soul prepared. Your habits started shifting, your energy started conserving, and now the moment is here, and you're ready. They didn't expect that. They expected you to fall apart when the mask dropped. But you were already rebuilding while they were still pretending. You were already healing from the betrayal they thought you hadn't discovered. You were already mapping out your next step while they were still trying to distract you. Because your knowing doesn't delay. You move in revelation, not reaction. And that's why they're so blown away. Because your next level didn't require their permission. You didn't wait for validation. You didn't beg for closure. You just listened to your spirit, and that spirit led you right into protection, right into provision, right into promotion. The same people who once tried to confuse your path are now confused about how you got so far without them. Chosen one, let this be your confirmation. Your knowing is not a burden, it's a blessing. You weren't crazy, You weren't imagining things, you were ahead. And now that the fog is lifting, people are starting to realize just how accurate you've been this whole time. The way you read energy, the way you navigate spiritually, the way you interpret silence, tension, avoidance, and words unspoken. You're not just sensitive, you're activated. This is why God kept you hidden for so long. Not because you weren't ready, but because the world wasn't. Your level of sight requires maturity, and now that you've stepped into that space, your gift is fully alive. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. The fruit of your discernment is enough. The peace you carry, the wisdom you walk in, and the calm confidence in your eyes. It all reveals that what you carry is real. And now the question is, how will you use it? Because this level of spiritual accuracy comes with responsibility. You're no longer just seeing for yourself, you're seeing for the future, for others, for the path you're blazing, for the generations that will follow your courage. Your gift is bigger than the room that tried to dim you. It's time to expand. You were given this knowing so you could lead, not dominate, not expose, but lead. You were built to be the one who speaks when others are confused, who guides when others are lost, who protects when others are vulnerable. And that's why the attacks were so precise. Because the enemy saw your knowing before you did, but now you see it too, and the game has changed. What they didn't realize is that your silence was a strategy forged in divine intelligence. You weren't staying quiet because you didn't know. You were silent because you did. You didn't react, not because you were weak, but because you understood how sacred timing works. You were letting the truth grow louder on its own. You were letting heaven do the heavy lifting while you stayed aligned with your assignment. Every time they spoke your name in lies, your spirit didn't flinch, because you had already seen the conclusion in the spirit before it happened in the natural. You knew who would fall off, who would betray, who would backpedal when truth surfaced, and you accepted it, not with bitterness, but with maturity. Because when you are truly chosen, you don't waste energy proving your innocence to the guilty. They thought they could trap you in confusion, that they could hide behind smiling manipulation, behind praise that smelled like control. But you decoded it. You spotted the envy disguised as advice, the sabotage hidden in concern, and you never called it out directly because you didn't have to. Your elevation did it for you. Your fruit proved what your mouth never needed to say. This is what makes your accuracy so unnerving. It's not loud, it's not theatrical, it's consistent, it's quiet knowing, it's calm conviction, the kind that doesn't need to say, "I told you so," because God already echoed your insight through the unfolding events. Everything you whispered in prayer, everything you sensed in silence, it's all playing out, and people are shaken by it. Some are intimidated by it. Others are inspired. But no one can deny it anymore. The accuracy of your discernment can't be dismissed. The same people who once rolled their eyes when you spoke are now quoting your words to others. The ones who avoided you now watch you. The ones who once called you paranoid now call you prophetic. Because truth can't be silenced forever, and yours just rose to the surface. But here's what they still don't get. Your insight isn't just about what's wrong. It's also about what's right. You don't just spot enemies, you spot potential. You see divine timing, open doors. You recognize soul alignment. You feel spiritual callings in people before they do. Your vision isn't fueled by fear, it's powered by purpose. And that's why you're entering a new era. One where your knowing is not just protection, it's navigation. One where your gift no longer isolates you, it guides you. You're no longer shrinking it for comfort, you're expanding it for destiny. You're not questioning it anymore. You're honoring it. You're no longer asking, "Why do I always see things others don't?" Now you understand, it's because you were born to lead. And to lead with accuracy, you must first be trained by betrayal. That's why you went through what you did. Every false friend, every broken alliance, every time you knew something was off but couldn't explain it. All of it was school, heaven's way of sharpening your discernment. Because you weren't just being prepared to see for yourself, you were being prepared to see for others. That's why your path was different. That's why you couldn't stay in shallow circles. Why small talk bored you. Why the things others celebrated made your spirit feel uneasy. You weren't built for surface. You were wired for depth. And now that you're walking in that awareness, everything is aligning with surgical precision. The right people are being drawn to your light, not because you're flashy, but because you're true. Your presence feels safe, not because you're soft, but because you're solid. Because you don't just carry answers, you carry discernment. And those who are hungry for alignment feel it. They may not be able to explain why, but they know they can trust you, not just with their secrets, but with their spirit. Chosen one, your knowing is healing the room before you even speak. Your awareness creates clarity. Your calm disrupts chaos. You don't even need to raise your voice. When you walk in, energy recalibrates. Why? Because your spirit is calibrated. Because you're no longer questioning your gift, you're walking in it. And this is only the beginning. You're going to begin noticing that the same rooms that once rejected your presence are now requesting your insight. The same people who doubted you are leaning in. But don't be distracted by attention. Stay focused on assignment, because your accuracy wasn't given for applause. It was given for impact. You're not called to impress, you're called to shift. You were born to see, to feel, to know before others do, not to gloat, but to guide. And now that you've survived the pain of being doubted, overlooked, and misread, you're ready. Ready to walk in full capacity. Ready to let your gift speak, even when your mouth stays closed. Ready to navigate with boldness, clarity, and peace. Let them be shocked. Let them whisper. Let them wonder how you always knew. Because you don't need credit, you have confirmation. And that's more than enough. The truth is, chosen one, not everyone around you was ready for your level of clarity. You weren't meant to blend in. You were meant to reveal, to reflect, to awaken. That's why your knowing offended them, because it required them to look at themselves in a way they weren't ready to face. Your silence mirrored their secrets. Your presence brought conviction. And your refusal to participate in the games they played exposed everything. You didn't have to expose them. They exposed themselves in your presence. They became uncomfortable not because you did anything wrong, but because your awareness stripped away their illusion. And that's what happens when light walks into the room. Darkness panics, masks fall, energy shifts. Truth starts vibrating louder than manipulation. You were never the problem. You were the signal, the interruption, the disruption, the divine reset. And you carried that without apology, even when it cost you relationships, even when you had to walk away in confusion, pain, and silence. Deep down, you still knew. You may have doubted yourself in moments, but your soul never wavered. It kept showing you glimpses, warnings, echoes, and now those echoes have become full clarity. This is why heaven is elevating you now, because you've been trained in secrecy, refined in obscurity, taught to trust your inner compass when no one else believed you. And now that what you sensed has been confirmed, the authority in your voice has weight. Not because you're loud, but because you're right. Not because you're perfect, but because you're pure in spirit. The world is hungry for what you carry. Not fake power, not shallow hype, but real spiritual accuracy. The kind that doesn't need to be flashy to be felt. The kind that holds people accountable without condemnation. The kind that reads the room without words. And most importantly, the kind that doesn't use insight to control, but to free. That's your power. You don't use your knowing to wound, you use it to heal, to warn, to direct, to protect. And that's what separates you from those who operate in manipulation. You know how heavy this gift is. You know how much it costs. That's why you've stayed low, hidden, quiet. Not because you're afraid, but because you honor the weight of what you carry. People are starting to notice that now. They're realizing you weren't seeking attention, you were seeking alignment. You weren't trying to be right in arguments. You were trying to stay in right standing with your purpose. And now that you've stayed faithful in the silence, heaven is giving you a platform built on truth, not trends. But don't be surprised when the same people who once mocked your discernment try to reconnect. Some will come back confused, others curious, a few even convicted. And you'll have the wisdom to know who to welcome and who to keep at a distance. Because discernment doesn't just see what's wrong, it sees what's true. And sometimes, what's true is that access must remain revoked. This is the era where your boundaries will reflect your wisdom. You no longer owe explanations for your distance. You're not being cold, you're being called. And some people can't follow you where you're going because they still refuse to see what you've always known. And that's okay. You don't need everyone to understand your path, you just need to stay obedient to it. Your spiritual accuracy is not a party trick. It's not entertainment. It's evidence of your assignment. And because of that, God is trusting you with deeper things now, with new revelations, with divine connections, with sudden clarity about your next steps. You're not in a guessing season anymore, you're in a knowing season. Things are going to start happening fast. Answers you've been waiting on are going to land without warning. Confirmations will show up in ways you can't deny. Dreams will become more vivid. Encounters will feel divinely orchestrated. That's not your imagination. It's your inheritance. You are stepping into the reward of obedience. The very same intuition that warned you about betrayal is now guiding you into your breakthrough. The same radar that protected your heart from manipulation is now positioning you for elevation. You didn't suffer for nothing. You didn't see for nothing. You didn't hold back for nothing. You were being positioned the entire time. Chosen one, don't shrink now. Don't second-guess your discernment now. You were made for this level. You were prepared in secret so you could rise in integrity. And yes, some people will be shocked at how far you've come. They'll be blown away by the clarity in your voice, the strength in your eyes, and the peace you carry in rooms that once tried to destroy you. But let them be shocked. Let them whisper. Let them spin whatever story they need to justify why they never believed you. It doesn't matter anymore. You're not walking for applause. You're walking in assignment. And when you're aligned with heaven, no amount of human disbelief can stop the move of God on your life. They may have underestimated your accuracy, but heaven never did. Now comes the shift, chosen one, not the shift of knowledge, but the shift of embodiment. You no longer just carry discernment like a hidden compass in your spirit. You walk as it. You breathe in alignment. You move in sacred rhythm, and everyone around you is starting to notice that you're not the same. The quiet watcher they once dismissed has become the divine mirror they now respect or fear. There's something powerful about a soul that can see and still remain soft. Someone who has been wounded by betrayal, attacked by envy, tested by deception, yet refuses to let bitterness take root. That's you. You knew the truth the whole time, yet you waited, not because you were weak, but because you were wise. You understood that the war wasn't yours to fight with words, it was yours to endure with presence. And now that presence has become your strongest weapon. Your accuracy made them uncomfortable, but your grace is what's humbling them now, because you didn't need to reveal receipts, you didn't need to defend your intuition, you didn't throw stones when lies were launched at you, you just remained. And now the same spirit that whispered truth into your soul in secret is confirming it publicly through breakthrough, elevation, and peace. They're stunned, not just because you knew, but because you survived what you knew. You lived with the weight of knowing, the tension of silence, the ache of isolation, and still chose to remain kind. That kind of strength isn't taught, it's divine. It comes from deep communion with God. It's the signature of someone who's been refined in fire, not fame. You were never meant to explain everything. That's why your words felt stuck in certain seasons. Because heaven didn't need you to speak, it needed you to see. And now, as the dust settles and truth rises like sun through smoke, it's clear. Your discernment wasn't paranoia. It was prophecy. Your knowing wasn't overthinking. It was insight. Your silence wasn't fear. It was strategy. And now that you've passed the test, the mantle you carry is increasing. You're no longer just seeing for survival. You're seeing for leadership. You're not just interpreting signs for yourself anymore. You're becoming a guidepost for others who are still learning to trust their inner voice. You're no longer the student in this realm. You are becoming the teacher through embodiment, not ego. This next level will require even more grace. Because as your light grows brighter, your discernment sharper, your peace more unshakable, more eyes will be drawn to you. Some will come for healing, others for curiosity. A few will come to test you, but you won't flinch. Because when you've lived through betrayal and trusted your spirit over surface appearances, you don't need external validation. You've already been validated internally. Chosen one, you are not a threat because of your past. You are a revelation because of your clarity. You don't threaten people with power, you challenge them with purity. You don't dominate rooms with noise, you shift atmospheres with presence. You don't need to prove who you are, you reveal it. Without forcing, without explaining, without shouting, you just walk in. And because you've now learned to trust your gift, the next season will open faster. Decisions will come with ease. You'll feel which opportunities are real before the pitch even lands. You'll sense who is safe before a word is spoken. You'll walk through rooms and know who's aligned and who's pretending. And you won't need to fix anyone. You'll simply flow. Let the record show you knew the whole time. You just waited for alignment. You let people underestimate you. You let them draw conclusions based on your silence. And now, that silence has become sound. It echoes through the rooms where your name was twisted. It rises in the eyes of those who dismissed your discernment. It flows through your energy, clear, confident, covered. You are rising, not with vengeance but with vision, not for revenge but for revival. Because now your knowing isn't just a shield, it's a sword. Your discernment isn't just protection, it's divine purpose. And the very moments that once made you question your gift are now affirming it, strengthening it, expanding it. You were born with this clarity. You just needed the storms to refine it. And now that they've passed, the air is clear. You can see again. You can trust again. But this time, it won't cost you peace. This time, you know how to guard your energy, preserve your wisdom, and walk in truth, even when it's lonely. They're blown away by your accuracy. But it was never about impressing them. It was always about walking in your assignment. You see clearly now, not because you're better, but because you listened to your gut, to your spirit, to God. And that's why the path ahead is lit. Not by applause, but by obedience. Keep walking. Keep trusting your knowing, because it has never failed you. It's been saving you.